Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. I welcome you all to this next episode of the Target Prelims 2022 Crash Course. I hope all of you have been watching all these episodes that we have been bringing live for you, discussing each and every subject from the UPSC examination syllabus, discussing the last 1 year current affairs, and also discussing some of those topics which have been in the news even before the last 12 months as well. So far, we have had classes on a lot of subjects including polity, economics, government schemes, geography, etc. And we will be continuing this series today from where we had left off yesterday. Yesterday, we had started our discussion on important government schemes, where we discussed some of the important prerogatives and the programs that are being run by the Government of India. Also, we discussed about the important features of each of those programs, along with the ministries and the departments that are running those programs. Today, we will continue from those and we will discuss some of the other important schemes that are being run by the Government of India, especially in the past year or so. As I told you yesterday also, this is an absolutely free crash course for each and every serious UPSC aspirant down there. All that you have to do is make sure that you attend these sessions sincerely, you like these videos, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel of BYJU'S IAS if you have not done that till now. Also, don't forget to share these videos with all your friends who are preparing for the UPSC examination. As I discussed yesterday also, what I want from you is, with each and every question that I will be discussing, do mark the answer with you, and at the end of the video, count how many questions were you able to answer. And in the comment section of the video, do leave what are your scores for today's test. It will serve two purposes. Number one, it will show us that yes, you have seen the video right till the end. So whatever hard work that we are doing for you is actually bringing certain results. Second, it will also help you in understanding where you stand as compared to the others. Because at the end of the day, this examination is all about doing better than what the other competitors are doing. So do make sure you follow that pattern as you did in yesterday's video as well. Also, this series will go on till 21st of May, where every evening, live from 7:30 till 9:30 p.m, we will have these classes. If you have still not downloaded the complete schedule of the series, you can do that from the description of the video, and you can get to know on which particular day would we have a discussion on which of these syllabus. So let's begin without any further ado with the first question that we have for you from the government schemes specifically. Question number one is this. The ICDS CAS, which also stands for Integrated Child Development Services Common Application Software, is also known by what name? Is it the Shiksha Tracker, the Poshan Tracker, MOOC Tracker, or the Anganwadi Tracker? Which of these trackers is also known by this long and complicated name? The correct answer, as most of you would know, is B. This is the Poshan Tracker. Now, those of you who are from a Hindi background would know what Poshan is. If you are from a non-Hindi background, the Poshan is actually a Hindi word that means nutrition. So as the name suggests, or as the meaning of this particular word suggests, the Poshan Tracker mainly is to track the nutritional progress of the children. So what this does is, it gives a live tracking of the status of Anganwadis. As you know, there are lakhs of Anganwadis across the country to ensure that children get appropriate nutrition, they get appropriate care, even when their mothers are not around, even when the mothers go and have to work, they can leave their children and the Anganwadis will take care of them. This particular tracker makes sure that we have an account of what is happening in each and every Anganwadi across the country and what is the progress in terms of what are the goals that have been achieved by these Anganwadis. As you can imagine, this particular scheme is being run by the Ministry of Women and Child Development. So do make a note of that also. It is Ministry of Women and Child Development that is running this particular scheme. I hope you attended yesterday's session also. When I began the session yesterday, I told you specifically that for the government schemes, there are certain important pointers that you have to keep in mind. First, whenever you talk about a government scheme, what is the implementing agency? what is the department or the ministry behind a particular scheme. Secondly, you have to understand or remember the target group. What exactly is the target group? The scheme tends to, or the scheme is trying to do a favor to which particular population. And the third thing, is there any target set for the scheme? That is why some add-on information that I will be providing will be on these points only. So do remember this, the portion tracker is being run by the Ministry of Women and Child Development. It has been working since 2018. These are the important points that you need to remember about this particular scheme. Next question. Under the revamped Pradhan Mantri Matra Vandana Yojana under Mission Shakti, the maternity benefit amounting to 6,000 rupees is also to be provided for the second child, but only if, number one, the second is a girl child, second, the first child was a girl, third, the first child has passed away, or fourth, the first child has a serious disease. So as you know, the Pradhan Mantri Matra Vandana Yojana is mainly a scheme by the Government of India to financially help the women who are becoming mothers in order to compensate for any loss in wages. What the government has realized is a lot of women right now are delaying pregnancy or maybe not taking a pregnancy because they are too worried about not being able to go to work and not being able to earn and contribute to their family. Now it has two consequences. Either they delay the pregnancy or put the pregnancy or push it so far behind that it becomes dangerous for their own health. Or secondly, the other consequence is that a lot of these mothers who after the pregnancy would require certain rest, would require certain time off and not to go back to work, these women are also forced to go back to work. So in order to ensure that that does not happen, the Government of India has come up with the scheme under which the government is saying that when your child is born, we will give you certain financial help, although not a lot, but we'll give you a certain financial help so that you don't have to go back to work. Now this is mainly for the first child. There is, however, one condition under which it applies to the second child also, that is when the second child is a girl child. The answer here is A. So when the second child is a girl child, this benefit will be given in case of the second child as well. As you can understand, this scheme obviously again is being run by the Ministry of Women and Child Development. Ministry of Women and Child Development. Also, this scheme does not give money to the mother as soon as the child is born. So what happens is there are different stages that have been decided by the government under which under 3 different installments the money is paid to the mother. So the mother will get the first installment once the pregnancy is registered. Then after that antenatal checkup has to be done. And after that, after a child is born, they officially register the birth of the child. Then and only then the third installment is to be given. Most of these benefit schemes that the government actually runs, such as these, are in the form of installments only. So this is also a scheme where in 3 different installments money will be given to these mothers. Next question. Consider the following statements with regards to the MGNREGA scheme, a scheme which all of you would have read a lot of details about. Number 1, the job seeker has completed 18 years or should have completed 18 years of age at the time of application. Second, within 21 days of submitting the application or from the day the work is demanded, wage employment will be provided to the applicant. Third, the applicant must be a citizen of India in order to seek the MGNREGA benefits. Which of these given statements is or are correct, especially regarding the MGNREGA scheme? Now, I am sure all of you would have read about this particular scheme. This is also considered as a right to work. This scheme runs in rural areas, in rural parts of India, where if anyone demands unskilled manual labor work, if you're demanding that you want unskilled manual labor work, it is the government's responsibility that if you're above 18 years of age, work will be provided to you. Now, when we say work will be provided to them, that means even if the work is not being provided, they will be paid wages for the work. How many days of work has to be provided? The condition is at minimum 100 days a year. Minimum 100 days a year. So if the person in the village is ready to do unskilled manual labor work, minimum 100 days in a year, this will be provided. Also, in case when there are certain areas that are suffering from a lot of natural calamities, flooding, drought, etc., then you would see that the government increases these number of days by 50. So in those areas it becomes 150 days in a year. But usually it is 100 days in a year where the government does provide the work. Now let's look at these statements one by one. The first is the job seeker has to be completed 18 years of age. That is correct. It is only after you have become an adult officially can you ask for work under the MGNREGA scheme. Second, within 21 days of submitting the application that you demanded the work, you should be given the work. This is actually not true. This is 15. Within 15 days. So for example, let's say today I go to my Gram Sabha and I say that I want to work under MGNREGA. Now from today, within 15 days, the work has to be provided to me. Now what if there is no work? It might happen that on the 16th day, 17th day, still the work is not given to me then. Then the law says even if the work is not given to me, from the 16th day onwards, I shall be paid the wages. So for the first 15 days, I can have to wait. But after that, even if the work is not given, mandatorily the wages would begin. The third statement also is true. You have to be a citizen of India in order to get benefits under this MGNREGA scheme. Now, as you can imagine, the ministry that works or the ministry that runs this scheme is the Ministry of Rural Development. Ministry of Rural Development. Do remember, this is a scheme only for rural India. Now, over here, there is also one interesting point that you need to understand. There were some articles in the newspapers about how our urban areas are expanding. I'll give you certain examples. For example, let's say Chennai. Now, nearby Chennai, if you look at 30, 40 years back, there were a lot of villages, etc. Now, because a lot of population has come into Chennai, a lot of people have shifted to Chennai because it is a commercial hub. That is why what city has done is the areas have expanded. The amount of area that was to be called Chennai city about 2 or 3 decades earlier was much smaller as compared to what it is right now. The result is a lot of villages which are nearby the city of Chennai have now become a part of Chennai. So they have lost the tag of a rural area. Now, what is the consequence of that? The consequence of that in a good sense is that the property rates will increase. So the people who already had property in those areas, for them, it is a very beneficial kind of a news that now their area has become an urban area, part of Chennai, so they can get better rates. But the unfortunate part here is that if there are people living in that area, now that area would not have schemes such as MGNREGA. Because MGNREGA scheme essentially is a scheme for the rural areas only. So if you are living in that particular area which has now become an urban area, it's not a rural area anymore, that means the MGNREGA scheme and such kind of scheme that are specially for the rural areas, they will not work. Okay. Also, the MGNREGA scheme specifically, it covers all the districts of India. So it's not that it only runs in a few districts, with one exception. The exception is if there is a district with 100% rural population, urban population, then MGNREGA scheme obviously does not work there. So a district with 100% urban population does not have the MGNREGA scheme. Apart from that, in all other districts of India, we do have the MGNREGA scheme. Okay. Let's see the next question. SPARSH, that is System for Pension Administration, is an initiative of number 1, Home Ministry, number 2, Defense Ministry, number 3, the Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, and number 4, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. This SPARSH scheme is actually running through the Defense Ministry. As the name suggests or as the answer suggests, this is specifically to ensure that all the pension related queries, all the pension related transactions can be done very easily online without any hassle. This is being run by the Defense Ministry. Now, this online portal is a place where if you are a defense personnel who has to get pension, if you have not gotten the pension on time, or if you have to raise any queries regarding that, you can do that just by going online. This is where it comes in very handy. For the defense especially, if you look at the defense budget of India, one of the biggest expenses that the Defense Ministry actually has is the pensions that they give out to all the people who have served in the armed forces. And that is why, because it is such a huge sum, because there are so many people who are dependent on these pensions, there has to be a much better way of ensuring that we do not have any issues in the disbursal of these pensions. For that, the Defense Ministry has launched the SPARSH system, SPARSH. If you go to the website of SPARSH, or if you go to the website of Ministry of Defense, this is what it looks like. So you can have all these options if you actually go to the website. If you have certain claims, if you think that there are certain requests that you have to put, if you have any queries on income tax, etc., all of that can be done using this particular system called SPARSH. There is one advice that I would have if you have enough time, but if you are preparing in a very holistic manner, especially for the mains examination, whenever you read about a government scheme or a government portal, SPARSH is one example. Whenever you read about these, do try and take out some time to visit the website of that particular government scheme or that particular government ministry. It is when you go to that website, that is when you just have to spend 5 to 7 minutes and you get to know all the options that are available there. So that when you're writing an answer or when you're attempting a question in the prelims examination, you would be able to answer that from a much better perspective. So make sure that whenever you read about such kind of government portals that have been introduced, do pay a visit at least once to these portals, and it will become much better in terms of your preparation. Next question. Which of the following is or are the correct eligibility criteria to get benefits under the PM Ujjwala scheme? Number 1. Applicants must be a woman above the age of 18 years and a citizen of India. Second, applicants should belong to a BPL, that is below poverty line household. And third, no one in the applicant's household should have a LPG connection. Which of these given statements is or are correct about the Ujjwala scheme or the Ujjwala Yojana? The correct answer here is D. All the 3 given statements about the Ujjwala Yojana are absolutely correct here. Recently, in fact, the Prime Minister also launched Ujjwala 2.0 as well. So the 2.0 version has also been launched by the government. This scheme was originally launched in 2016. When it was launched, it became a big topic of discussion. This was a scheme under which, as you know, free LPG connections were being given. Now, the reason why this scheme came up was that in many of the rural households and many of the poor households, we saw that there were not many LPG connections. So, in the kitchens, woods were being used, coal was being used, a lot of very harmful materials were used every single day just to cook. Because of that, because of indoor pollution, there were very hazardous health effects, specifically on the women who used to spend a lot of time in the kitchen nearby these sources of pollution. And that is why the government of India started this particular scheme, because they thought that the reason why people are not opting for these kind of facilities, LPG connections, etc., is because the initial cost is high. That is, when you actually go and take a connection, when you actually go and take your first cylinder, you have to put some deposit, and that is some kind of a deterrent as per the government. And that is why the PM Ujjwala Yojana came into being, to give financial support specifically for LPG connections. Now, the other question that I have is, was it successful? That is, after this scheme has been introduced, do you now see that in all those houses where they were not using LPG earlier, are they using it now? Now, it's kind of a mixed reaction. You see a lot of reports coming out which indicate that although under this particular scheme, there was a free LPG connection given. However, when it comes to refilling of the cylinders, after 1 month, couple of months or 3 months, whenever your cylinder is over, when you have to refill that, that again becomes a deterrent. Mainly because the cost of LPG is rising. And that is why it was seen that even the people who were given these benefits under the Ujjwala Yojana, even the households that the government was trying to push towards using LPG, now a lot of them have gone back to the earlier methods that they were using, unfortunately, because the LPG cylinders that they have to buy after that, for that they don't really get any additional help. And that is still very, very unaffordable to a lot of people, and that is why the government of India has now looked into it in another manner, and the government has now launched Ujjwala 2.0. Now, how is Ujjwala 2.0 different? There is one very interesting thing in Ujjwala 2.0. Earlier, what used to happen was, let's say that you live in a certain city and your identification card, Aadhaar card or voter ID card belong to that city. But as it happens with a lot of poor households, that you have to go outside your city, you have to go to a different part of the country to work. When you go, let's say you are living in a city in UP and then you have to go to, let's say, Mumbai to work. Now in Mumbai, if you are or if you want to have these kind of new LPG connections, you would need to show your address proof. A lot of times what happens, because your address proof is not of that city or that state, you will not get those connections. So a lot of people had many problems in getting these LPG cylinder connections because their address proof was not matching. It was not of that particular city or state. That has also been resolved by the government. Under Ujjwala 2.0 now, if you are to a new city or if your address proof is not of that city or state, you just have to give a self-declaration. That is it. Just have to give a self-declaration saying that yes, I belong to some other city, but I am living in this and this area in this city right now. So do give me this cylinder connection, and that will be given. So that is something that the government is doing, trying to increase the coverage of this. Apart from this, the government is also giving a hot plate so that they can cook free of cost initially when the connection will be given. Also, under the 2.0 Ujjwala Yojana, which was launched recently by the Prime Minister, there were some other categories that were also added who can take benefits under this particular scheme. That included scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, then there were forest dwellers, etc. Forest dwellers means people who are living in forest. So dwell means to live. And there were some other categories also who were added under this. For example, the people who are getting benefits from the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the people who get benefit under the Antyodaya Yojana. So all these people have also been included under this scheme who can take benefit of this free LPG connection under Ujjwala 2.0 now. Even tea gardeners, etc., those who are from the vulnerable section, especially economically, all of them can take benefit of this scheme under Ujjwala 2.0. Next question is this. Which of the following is the objective of SVAMITVA scheme? Number 1. The scheme seeks to map residential land ownership in rural sector using modern technology like the use of drones. Second, to establish a single window clearance mechanism for defense-related startups in India. Third, to act as a dedicated portal to resolve pension-related issues of the armed forces personnel. And fourth, to build all-weather roads to all the villages in India. Which of these is a SVAMITVA scheme? If you have read about this, you would know the correct answer here is A. Now, why was this scheme launched? What was the objective? If you are living in a rural area, you would know, or if you have friends who live in the rural areas, one of the biggest point of conflict in rural areas where the people have to go to lok adalats or they even have to go to the courts is the land dispute. Because land ownership papers in case of rural areas specifically are very, very old. They have been passed on from one generation to the other. A lot of these papers which are about the land measurement and the land ownership are not very accurate. And there are a lot of problems in interpreting those kind of graphs. Where does my plot end? Where does my neighbor's plot begins? Where does my area ends? What is your territory, our territory? All of these issues are very, very common in India's rural areas especially. To resolve those issues, to reduce a workload of the lok adalats and the courts also, and to make the life in the rural areas especially easier, this scheme has been launched called the SVAMITVA scheme. Now, under the SVAMITVA scheme, what the government is trying to do is, government is trying to use drones and other kinds of technology to undertake aerial surveys of all the rural areas so that we can have a much more accurate and much better and precise maps of all the areas. So that we can have a proper ownership record of everyone, and we do not have to have these kind of issues where people are tussling over a piece of land. That is what the SVAMITVA scheme is. SVAMITVA here stands for Survey of Villages and Mapping with improvised technology in the village areas. As you can understand, this is run by the Ministry of Panchayati Raj. So Ministry of Panchayati Raj is the implementing agency behind this particular scheme. The Government of India is planning to cover across the country all the villages by 2024 in the next phase. Next question is, these are some of the pointers about the scheme. Next question is this: Energy Forever is the official motto of which of the following organizations? Number 1, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Number 2, India Renewable Energy Development Agency Limited. Third, NTPC. And fourth, the Power Grid Corporation of India. Now, these are not very easy questions, because I know for a fact that when you read about different types of bodies and agencies in your preparation, none of you focuses on what is the official motto. Many of you would also be thinking, does the UPSC even ask these kind of questions? And to those who are asking this, let me tell you, in the past, just a few years back, the UPSC had asked a question about what is the motto of Supreme Court of India. So Supreme Court's motto also has been asked in the past. So the UPSC is not very far away from asking these kind of questions for other agencies as well. So that is why we are discussing this here. The answer to this question is Energy Forever is actually the official motto of Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency Limited. That is IREDA. Now, what is IREDA? Many of you might have heard about this. IREDA is actually a mini Ratna company under the Government of India. Their main responsibility is that they give financial support, especially to those projects which are being done in the area of renewable energy. So if in the area of renewable energy, let's say you want to open up a new business, or you want to set up something new, manufacturing facility, etc., then this agency will help you. So in that sense, it is actually a non-banking financial company, that is NBFC as you call it. It has been working since 1987 as a mini Ratna company, helping these organizations who want to set up their business in the renewable energy field with all the assistance financially, especially, which they can offer. Okay? And the motto of IREDA is Energy Forever. Let's see the next question. Consider the following statements with regards to National Investigation Agency. Number 1. It works under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Second, a state government may request the central government to hand over the investigation of a case to the NIA, provided the case has been registered for the offences as contained in the schedule to the NIA Act. Third, the NIA special courts are empowered with all the powers of the Court of Sessions under the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 for trial of any offence. Which of these given statements is or are correct about the NIA? The correct answer here is D. All the given statements about the NIA are correct. That is India's premier investigative agency, especially in terror related cases. Now, I'm sure all of you would be aware that the NIA actually came into being after the unfortunate 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. It was after that that the Government of India thought that we need to have a specialized agency which will look specially into investigating cases related to terrorism in the country. The reason why we are discussing this here is that in 2019, there were certain changes that were made in NIA's working, in the sense that their powers increased. Now, as per the Act, as per the amendment that has been made in the law, the NIA Amendment Bill of 2019, there are some other kinds of offences over which the NIA now has the power to investigate. Those include human trafficking as well, So if there are cases with respect to human trafficking, NIA can take up those cases also. Then it also includes manufacture of prohibited arms, cyber terrorism, etc. So the scope of working of NIA has been increased considerably. That is why it was in the news in 2019. As I said in the beginning of the video also and yesterday as well, apart from the current affairs of past 12 months or so, we will be taking up some of the important current affairs of even before that, because we have seen how UPSC actually asks these questions. UPSC in their syllabus has not defined that we will only be discussing important news from the 12 months in the past or so. There have been instances where they have discussed current affairs from even before that, and that is why, playing it safe, we want to give you as much important information as possible. The only thing that we want in return is your appreciation in the form of likes, in the form of the fact that you have to subscribe to the YouTube channel of BYJU'S IAS. So, NIA came into being in 2008. Also remember, it is a statutory body. When we say statutory body, that means there was an act passed by the Parliament of India especially in order to create the NIA, and that is how it came into being. Next question. The Defence Acquisition Council, DAC, is headed by Prime Minister, the Chief of Defence Staff, the Defence Minister, or the Defence Secretary. Which of these organizations actually head the Defence Acquisition Council? The correct answer here is C. It is the Defence Minister. Now, I'll give you a very interesting example. Whenever you read about any official government document, you read about any news in the PIB also, even if it is written in English, you would see that Defence Minister is mentioned as Raksha Mantri. Defence Minister is usually mentioned as Raksha Mantri. Even if it is the news that is written in English, they will write it like this, Raksha Mantri. So, Raksha Mantri or Defence Minister is the one that heads the Defence Acquisition Council. Now, what is this? It is very, very clear from the name itself. The Defence Acquisition Council is the body that has a final say on acquisition of defence-related commodities. So, acquisition of weapons, etc., or anything related to defence. They are the ones who come together, decide what do we have to import, what do we have to take, etc. So, this is the Defence Acquisition Council. Now, my question to you is, which I want you all to answer in the chat or answer in the comment section after you see the video. This Defence Acquisition Council was created after which war or after what incident? It's a very simple question. Did something important happen? Why was there a need felt by the Government of India that we need to create such kind of a body called the Defence Acquisition Council? Do get me the answer in the comment section as you did in yesterday's class as well. Let's move on to the next question. The National Trust is a statutory body of the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, that works for the welfare of the persons with which of the following disabilities: autism, cerebral palsy, mental retardation, multiple disabilities. Which of these are covered under the responsibilities of the National Trust, which is a statutory body? Now, the interesting part is that this is not one of those bodies that you hear a lot about. It is not covered in a lot of books. It is not even covered in a lot of current affairs as well. But this is a significant body. This body covers all these categories of people, and the answer here is D. The National Trust here has the responsibility of ensuring that all the possible kind of assistance, that is legal assistance, is provided to them. So all the legal assistance that they require, and apart from legal assistance, they also provide social assistance or in the kind of welfare as you call, for all these people. It is a statutory body. Do remember, guys, we usually commit a mistake thinking that, for example, if you have read your Indian polity from M. Lakshmikant book. Now, in the M. Lakshmikant book, you would see a lot of constitutional or statutory bodies, but don't think that those are the only statutory bodies in India. Apart from the ones that are mentioned in your Indian polity book, there are many, many other statutory bodies that we have. a body that is created through an act of parliament is a statutory body. So there are many other statutory bodies beyond that which are mentioned in your book as well. An example of it is this, the National Trust, which works for the welfare of all these categories of people. Let's look at the next question. The objective of the recently announced or recently in news Operation AAHT, AAHT is what? Number one, to curb human trafficking. Second, to improve the efficiency of Indian railways. Third, to prevent child marriages. And fourth, to discourage the practices of superstition and black magic. Which of these is the objective of AAHT AAHT? Now, the operation AAHT was covered in a few news but not very widely. Even if you actually do and Google it right now, Google will ask you, are you talking about Operation Rahat? That is the evacuation operation that the Indian government took up. So you have to remind Google, no, not Operation Rahat, but Operation AAHT, AAHT. So AAHT is actually an operation that works to curb human trafficking. Now it's an interesting operation in the sense that usually issues of human trafficking, etc., which are unfortunately a reality in India, these kind of issues usually come under the prerogative of the police. So usually the state police is the one that takes up these kind of cases of human trafficking. But the problem with this is that state police works within their jurisdiction. I'll give you an example. So there are some states in India, especially the ones where poverty is seen in much more areas. For example, let's say there's Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. So in these states, there is a problem of human trafficking where people will either illegally kidnap a child, or there are people who pay a certain amount of money to the parents and then they take the child. And then what they do is they bring that child to some other part of the country where they sell the child either into prostitution or child labor or for some other kind of things. Now what happens is when these kind of cases are being handled by the state police, there is a problem with that. So for example, let's say there is a incident that happened in Jharkhand. So the Jharkhand police is trying to go ahead, catch the people. Now when they have to travel to the other state, let's say they have to go to Maharashtra, Delhi, UP, some other state where they thought that the child has been taken. In other state, they might not have that jurisdiction. Now there's a lot of paperwork that is involved. So they will have to ask for permission from the other state, can we come here, can we undertake the operation or not? And that is what creates a problem. That is why a lot of cases of human traffickings have not been resolved. So the solution from the government side is that this has been made a responsibility of the railways. Because in most of the cases what we have seen is that whenever the human trafficking thing happens, the transportation of children or the transportation of people takes place from one place to the other through railways. The good part about this is that railways is not bound by jurisdiction of state. While the state police is bound by jurisdiction, the railway police is not bound by that. So railway police, for example, has their jurisdiction over railway stations in Mumbai also, and over railway stations in Ranchi also, in Kolkata also, Delhi also, everywhere. So that is why it is an interesting operation where the Indian Railways or Railway Police has been roped in to ensure that we put an end to human trafficking, so that we can overcome the problems that are being faced by the police in handling these kind of cases. Okay. Now, as I said, under Operation Rahat, there would be a lot of information sharing, there would be a lot of confidence building measures, and that is how the railways is trying to catch up on these people who are indulging in human trafficking. Let's move on to the next question. Consider the following statements with regards to unique land parcel identification numbers, ULPIN scheme. Number one, under the scheme, a 12-digit identification number will be issued to every plot of land in the country. Second, it is being described as the Aadhaar for land, a number that would uniquely identify every surveyed parcel of land and prevent land fraud, especially in rural India, where land records are outdated and disputed. Third, the identification will be based on the longitude and latitude of the land parcel and is dependent on the detailed surveys and geo-reference cadastral maps. Which of these given statements about the given scheme, that is ULPIN, is or are correct? If you have read about the scheme, great. If you have not, the correct answer here is 2 and 3. The first statement is wrong because it is actually a 14-digit identification number, not a 12-digit. And that is why this is wrong. The scheme is very clear from the question itself. The objective is also very much same as what we discussed in the SVAMITVA scheme. In rural areas in India especially, the problem is that the land records are disputed and there's a lot of dispute about the ownership of the land, and that is why the government has been taking multiple initiatives to ensure that this problem of the land ownership gets resolved. Under this only, there is unique land parcel identification number given. So every plot that is surveyed by the government will be given a specific number, which will not be a 12-digit number, it will be a 14-digit number. Now, on this particular theme or these kind of questions have also been asked in the past. I'll give you certain examples in what kind. So for example, we have had a question in the past where the statements were that Aadhaar is a, let's say, 12-digit number, or Aadhaar is a 8-digit number or 10-digit number. And we also have had questions about PAN card that you have. So the PAN number of a particular individual, it's a 10-digit number or 12-digit number where first digit identifies this, second digit identifies this. So these kind of questions have been asked in the past. This is a similar kind of a question where you have to know that this kind of a PIN that is being done by unique land parcel identification numbers is how many digits long. As the name suggests, this scheme is also run by the Ministry of Rural Development. This is basically because it is for the rural areas to ensure that the land ownership records are all sorted. So it will be kind of an Aadhaar for the land, not just this, it will be linked to the Aadhaars of the owners so that you can easily identify who actually owns what. Also, it will be a 14-digit number. It will provide the coordinates of the land as well, as the third statement was that while providing these pins to the land, we will take into consideration the latitude and the longitude of that particular area. Only then we will be giving these pins. Next, the Global Hunger Index is published by number 1, the World Food Programme, number 2, the FAO, that is the Food and Agriculture Organization, third, World Bank, and fourth, none of the above. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now the correct answer here is actually D, none of the above. What I want you to do is tell me which organization publishes it in the comment section. If 1, 2 and 3 are wrong, if these 3 are not the correct answer, then which is the organization that actually publishes it? Do let me know in the comment section. Also, you need to understand how is the word hunger defined. Now usually when you see these kind of indices and you see the rank that India has got in these indices, you would find that India usually does not get a very good rank. Now that is also because we don't understand the concept of hunger properly. I'll give you a simple example. If I lock you up in a room for, let's assume, 6 months, and for every day I only give you rice to eat and nothing else, only rice. Now if you want to be alive, you will obviously have rice. That means that at the end of 6 months, you will not die of starvation. You will not be hungry. Because whenever your body needed food, when your body needed energy, you could consume rice. So that was fine. However, is your body getting the kind of nutrition that it needs? No. So under the definition of the word hungry, you will be called hungry. Because your body did not get nutrition that it needs. It's not about the quantity of the food. It is about what is inside that food. It is about the components and the ingredients of those food. That is where the definition of hunger comes in. So when you talk about the Global Hunger Index, you talk about nourishment. You talk about how many ingredients were useful for the human body, what minerals, what vitamins did the body have, and you don't really talk about what exactly is the quantity of the food that the person has eaten. Okay, this survey started in 2006. I'll give you a hint, it is not conducted by any government organization. I'm sure many of you would already have gone to the answer. Do leave it in the comment section, but if you still don't know, it is not done by any government agency. I want you all to find out and let me know in the comment section. Now, do remember this is also important. Apart from the fact that the UPSC asks you about these indices, as in who publishes these reports, who publishes these indices, the UPSC also has a tendency of asking these kind of information, as in how is it calculated? What is kept in mind? What are the parameters kept in mind while calculating this? So over here, the Global Hunger Index is calculated keeping these things in mind. There are 3 dimensions and 4 indicators. The 3 dimensions are inadequate food supply, child mortality, and child undernutrition. Child undernutrition then is divided into 2 parts, child wasting and child stunting. As you know, stunting means when the child is lower in height as compared to what the child ideally should be in terms of the age of the child. Child wasting is when the child is much thinner as compared to what the child should have been. All these things are taken into consideration when the Global Hunger Index report is published. Do remember this, because these kind of parameters, etc. for the reports are also asked very regularly. Okay. Let's move on to the next question then. We will move on to one more such kind of a report or index. This time, a report or index which is specifically with respect to India. The Good Governance Index, which ranks the states on the basis of multiple parameters, is prepared by the Niti Aayog, second, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, third, the PMO, and fourth, the Ministry of Cooperation. Which of these are the agencies which come up with the Good Governance Index, that is a GGI? Not a difficult question to answer. This is B. The Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, also known as a DARPG. This is the report, or this is the agency that comes up with the report called the Good Governance Index. Now, what is the significance of this and why is it done? The Good Governance Report or the Good Governance Index is mainly an index which ranks different states on the basis of different parameters on their performance. For example, some of the parameters taken into consideration include their work in the field of public health, agriculture, apart from that, environment, judiciary, that is at the lower level. All these things are taken into consideration, and then we have this report which ranks different states in different orders. Now, the reason why this is important is, and I've given this example earlier as well, let's assume that I own a big business and I want to open up a new factory. Now, when I have to open up a new factory, I will have to see which state is best suited or which city is best suited for me. Because I don't want any problems in that. I want my investment to be safe. I want that people should get jobs. I want to have good publicity. I want good judiciary. I want good police. Only then I would invest all this money. How do I decide that? I look at these kind of indices. The Good Governance Index, where I think the governance will be good, and that is why I go in there and invest. If you have seen now, it has become a trend. It started with Gujarat, where we used to have this vibrant Gujarat summit. It was started when Narendra Modi was actually the Chief Minister of Gujarat. So he started it when there was summits that were held in Gujarat, where he and his government invited investors and big companies to see Gujarat, to have investment and to invest their money. Now you see these kind of summits happening in almost every state of India. Maharashtra, Odisha, there was in UP. A lot of states are now learning from this idea and trying to invest it. And from the point of view of the investors, they see, is the state being governed in the good manner or not? Only and only then they want to come in and invest. When you talk about this Good Governance Index, as I said earlier, there are certain parameters that are taken into consideration while giving this particular report. For example, condition of commerce and industry, judiciary, social welfare of the people, agriculture, allied sector, environment, public health, citizen sector and governance, all of these are taken into consideration. Also, because there are different types of states in India, some are very big, some are small, some have their own natural advantage because of resources, some have their natural disadvantage because they're hilly areas, not a lot of plain area to set up big industries. That is why this index also has 4 different categories. Do remember this. So when the index report is released, they have 4 different categories. First is called Group A states, second is called Group B states, third is called Northeast and Hill states, and the fourth is Union territories. So these are the 4 different parameters or different categories on the basis of which the Good Governance Index is released. Connected to this, I have one more question for which also I want you to tell me the answer in the comments. The Indian government observes the Good Governance Day when exactly? The Indian government observes the Good Governance Day when? On what occasion exactly is it celebrated or is it observed? Do let me know in the comment section. So there are a lot of questions that you have to answer in the comment section. So do keep a note of that as well. Meanwhile, let's go ahead with the next question. Consider the following statements with regards to the Sampann project. Number 1, it is an online pension processing system and payment system for the pensioners. Second, it is implemented by the Ministry of Communications, Controller General of Communication Accounts, Department of Telecommunications. Third, it provides direct credit of pension into the bank account of the pensioners. Which of these given statements about the Sampann scheme is or are correct? Now the correct answer for this question is D. All these statements given about the Sampann scheme specifically are correct. Now, when these kind of questions, you might have a confusion in your mind. How is it that a scheme for pension is being handled by Ministry of Communications? Now, the reason is that this was mainly launched for the BSNL employees. So, it was basically for the BSNL employees. It was launched first in 2018. And that is why this was made a responsibility of the Ministry of Communication. As the name suggests, this is specifically to ensure that this ensures direct benefit transfer into the bank account of the pensioners. If your parents or anyone that you know in your family is a pensioner, you would understand the pain of being a pensioner in India. To get pensions, you have to keep on proving every single or after every few months that you are still alive. Because what if the pensioner has passed away, the government does not want to keep on giving pensions. So government puts the onus on the person who is getting the pension. After every few months, you have to report and you have to prove that no, I am alive, I want to get my pension. So getting pensions in India is not that easy, especially because of a lot of human to human interaction. When you have to go to your government office, ask for pension and give proof, etc., that is when it becomes very difficult. And that is why the government under this particular scheme has made it an online thing where there will be direct account transfer and you would not have to interact with anyone asking for pension. So this is the Sampann Yojana. Next question. Consider the following statements with regards to e-Chhawani project. Those who don't know Hindi, the word Chhawani is actually the cant area or the cantonment area. The cant areas, which are residential areas of people working in the armed forces, those are called Chhawani in Hindi. So, first statement, it is a unified portal for 62 cantonment boards, which will enable the citizens to have ready access to information regarding their cantonment board. Second, this portal also helps the citizens to avail the civic services delivered by the cantonment boards. Third, it will also provide an online property tax payment facility. Which of these given statements about the e-Chhawani project is or are correct? The correct answer here is D. All the given statements about the e-Chhawani project are correct. This will ensure that the citizens who are living in these areas, who are living in the cantonment areas, have access to a lot more facilities. Now, You would be aware in almost every district in India, we do have these cant areas which are very well maintained. They have very, very good infrastructure, in a lot of cases better than other parts of the city. But one of the reasons is that they are not managed or handled by the municipality of that particular place. In your municipality chapter or in your urban local bodies chapter in your book, you would have read about different types of urban local governments. Remember? In urban local governments, one of the government that you actually read about are the cantonment boards. Cantonment boards are those places which work kind of like a municipality for the cant areas. All these cantonment boards, 62 of them now, have been enabled for information sharing, etc. Citizens can avail civic services living in these areas through this portal, and you can also pay online property tax. So all these statements are correct. Also, if you remember, if you understand this, all the cantonment boards work under the Union Defence Ministry, which is very obvious. So, in other terms, while the state government has control over their areas, over their cities, districts, etc., but within the cant areas or the cantonment areas, it is actually the Ministry of Defence that comes under it. Now, the cantonment board usually has elected members. Apart from that, there is also ex officio members who are nominated under the Cantonment Act of 2006. Also remember, there are 4 categories of cantonment areas or cantonment board as you call them. The first is, or cantonment board 1, is where population is 50,000 or more. So, number 1 is those cantonment areas where the population is 50,000 or more. Second are the ones where population is 10,000 to 50,000. These are called category 2 cantonment boards. Category 3 are the ones where population is 2,500 to 10,000. And the fourth is 2,500 or below. These are the 4 categories of the cantonment areas that we have as per the Cantonment Act of 2006. Let's move on to the next question. Also before that, this is again a snippet of e-Chhawani. As I told you earlier also, it is always a very, very good practice that whenever you read about any kind of a government scheme or a government portal, something that you can visit online, please make it a habit to do that, because it will really help you in picturizing and remembering the stuff in a much better situation. Next question is this. Consider the following statements. Number 1. The Broadcast Audience Research Council, that is BARC, is a joint industry body founded by stakeholder bodies that represent broadcasters, advertisers, and advertising and media agencies. Second, BARC India owns and manages a transparent, accurate, and inclusive TV audience measurement system. Third, the BARC was established as an autonomous, not-for-profit body duly registered under the Companies Act of 2013. Which of these given statements is or are correct about BARC or BARC? The correct answer here is D. All these given statements are correct. If you remember, a few months back, BARC was a lot in the news, especially with respect to the concept of TRP, television rating points. Now, what was the idea and what was the controversy all about? It was seen and it was alleged that some channels, especially the news channels, are artificially increasing their TRP. They have actually ensured that the TRP of their news channels or their news programs is inflated, because on TRP, on the basis of that, they get a lot of ad revenues. For example, if I have a company, I have to sell a car, or if I have to sell any product and I want to give an ad on television, I would obviously want to give my ad during that particular channel or that particular program which is watched by most of the people. Now, how do I get to know this? How do I get to know that at 9 p.m. people are watching Ravish Kumar, or they are watching Arnab Goswami, or they are watching someone else on the TV? I would get to know this if I have access or knowledge about the TRP. So this is what TRP is. That it shows mostly the advertisers and the people in that industry who is watching what. Now, how is it calculated? It is calculated by an agency called BARC. Now, what do? It is not some artificial intelligence kind of a thing. So, BARC or BARC, they randomly choose certain houses. Let's say they choose your house. So, they'll come to your house and they will say that we want to attach a small box to your TV. It will do nothing. We will give you some money also. Let's say 1,000 rupees a month, 2,000 rupees a month. Just don't switch off that. So whenever you just watch your TV normally, we are just attaching a box. Now what will the box do? That box will record what are you watching for how much time. So for example, the box will record that if you watch TV, let's say 5 hours a day, out of those 2 hours you are watching a specific channel. 2 hours you are watching something specific. For 1 hour only you are watching something else. So this box will send data, collect data. How much time are you spending on what channel, on what program? That is how BARC calculates the TRP. Now what happened is, this is undisclosed information. Means I or you or media channels etc. don't have information about in which houses these boxes are being placed. These are not in my house, these may be in your house, maybe in someone else's house, but this is not public information. But what happened was some media houses, through their sources in BARC, found out what places are there or what houses are there where these boxes are now set up. In these houses, they used to go and they used to give more money to the person, asking them to just keep their TVs on. Don't watch our channel, doesn't matter. You just keep the TV on our channel, and then you just go and take a walk and whatever. We'll give you 10,000 rupees. So that is how the TRPs were inflated, and that is why this body BARC came into the picture. Okay, this is an agency, or this is a company that first started in 2010. A lot of these people came together. People who are working in the media industry, the government, etc. also came together. The advertising also came together, because all of them wanted pure data about who is watching what for how much time, so that they can do their business, so that they can calculate the TRP. And that is how this BARC came into the picture. Okay. Next question is this. Consider the following statements with regards to witness protection scheme. Number 1. Category A witnesses are those where the threat is moderate and extends to harassment or intimidation of the witness or his family members, reputation, property during investigation, trial or thereafter. Then there are category B witnesses, those where the threats extends to safety, reputation or property or witness or family members during the investigation or thereafter. Then there are category C witnesses, where threat extends to life of the witness or the family members during the investigation, trial or thereafter. Which of these given statements is or are correct with respect to the witness protection scheme? So let me first tell you what is this. So witness protection scheme is a very simple scheme, although very important. If you are a witness in a crime and you are coming forward and telling the truth, you are going to the court, giving your statement, etc. In a high profile case, especially, that can be dangerous for these witnesses, because there have been cases where people who are accused take out their anger, frustration, or they harm these witnesses. As you have seen in the movies, it does happen in real life also in many cases. So it is a government's responsibility to ensure that there is a witness protection scheme. So if you are a witness, then you should be protected by the government. For that scheme's purpose, how much protection should you be given? How should the government protect you? What facilities should be given to you? For that purpose, the government has made 3 categories of witnesses, A, B and C. This is what this question is about. Which of these given statements is or are correct? The correct answer is B. Out of the 3, only second one is correct. That is, category B witnesses are the ones which have a middle perception of threat. A and C are actually interchanged. So C is this and A is this. So category A witnesses are the ones which have the most threat, which have the biggest danger. Those are category A witnesses where the threat extends to their life and the life of their family members also. Category C are the ones where the threat is the least. Threat is very moderate. It might be reputational threat, it might be harassment of some kind, but it will not go into killing the other person. That is why the correct answer here is B. A and C are exchanged. Now, about this particular scheme, do remember this because it is an important scheme under which the government is trying to protect the people and asking them to come forward and make sure that witnesses are protected by the police as much as possible. Their protection will be based on the threat perception. How much threat are they getting? What are the kind of threats that the police is expecting to the witness? Next question. Which of the following is the stated objective of Bharat Ke Veer scheme? Number 1. To enable willing donors to contribute towards a family of a brave heart who sacrificed his or her life in the line of duty. Second, to enable easy disbursal of pension to the members of the armed forces. Third, to take up complaints of the members of the armed forces against the government. And fourth, to enable armed forces personnel to develop new skills for a post-military career. Which of these are the objectives of Bharat Ke Veer? The correct answer is A. This scheme is specially for those people, for you, me, etc. If you want to contribute to the people who are in the armed forces, especially the family members of those people in the armed forces who have sacrificed their life, then you can contribute under this scheme. The money will go to the families of these people who have sacrificed their life for the honor of the country. This scheme is called Bharat Ke Veer. Now, also do remember, this does not cover people working in the Army, Navy, Air Force. This is mainly for the CAPF. That is Central Armed Police Forces. Do remember that. Okay. So, this covers Central Armed Police Forces. For example, BSF, CRPF, then there is NSG, Sashastra Seema Bal, Assam Rifles. These are the kind of forces that are covered under this particular scheme. It is not really for Indian Army, etc. This was launched by the Union Home Ministry because CAPF works under Union Home Ministry. It was in 2017 that it was first launched. Under Bharat Ke Veer scheme, you can also contribute towards the well-being of the people who have lost their lives. Also, in order to encourage these kind of donations, the government has also given income tax exemption on these kind of donations. So, for example, if you are donating money under this scheme, you will be getting income tax exemption. That is how the government is encouraging people to come out and contribute under this particular scheme. Next. Samadhan is a dedicated web portal for what? Number 1. Conciliation, arbitration and adjudication of income tax disputes. Second, conciliation, arbitration and adjudication of industrial disputes. Third, conciliation, arbitration and adjudication of GST related disputes. Or fourth, conciliation, arbitration and adjudication of labor related disputes. The correct answer here is B. It is mainly for industrial disputes. In fact, even inside the industrial dispute is for one very specific purpose. So, the purpose is, it will be helpful for the MSMEs where specifically they have been facing payment defaults. See, it is very unfortunate that one of the reasons why it is difficult to do business in India is, let's say you open up a small enterprise, you open up a small business with your hard-earned money, you start supplying certain goods to certain companies or certain individuals, and when the time comes to actually take money, or when the time is for them to pay you up, in lot of cases they don't pay you up, or there's a lot of delay, and because they don't pay you up on time, it is a capital that actually gets on accumulating and you can't really rotate it. For example, let's say I have a business of making shoes. So in order to make shoes, let's say I took a loan from the bank of 1 crore rupees. And I made, because I have to make shoes of a lot of different varieties, different sizes, different colors. So I invested all that money. I thought the shoes will go, it will be sold, I'll get the money, and then I'll make more shoes, etc. So I make the shoes of 1 crore rupees, I sold it to the shops, and now the retailers are telling me, we will only give you the money when the shoes sell. So if today one shoe was sold, take 2,000 rupees for that. Tomorrow, if 2 more are sold, I'll give you 2,000 rupees. So what happens is, the money that I had is fixed up in the inventory. Although that was not a part of the deal. The agreement was that they will give me payment upfront, but still they are not doing it. Why? Because they also think that I am a small company, where will I go? I will not have good lawyers, I won't have the money to fight a case, and that is why they take unfair advantage of these MSMEs. For this specific purpose, this Samadhan portal has been launched. So this Samadhan portal is specially for the MSMEs, where they can file complaints regarding default payments, or they can regarding delayed payments mainly. Because for MSMEs, the government of India has been taking out a lot of schemes, especially to ensure that their working conditions or their ease of doing business increases in India. That is how the MSMEs are being held under this. I would advise you to go to this portal, just check it out, just check the options that are available, because once you see it with your own eyes, it becomes much easier for you to remember about this as well. Let's move on to the next question. Consider the following statements with regards to Pradhan Mantri Khanij Kshetra Kalyan Yojana. Number 1. It will be implemented by the district mineral foundations of the respective districts using the funds accruing from the DMF. Second, the Act says that every time mine holder has to contribute 10% of their royalty towards the funds if mining leases are granted after Jan 2015. Third, the approval of Gram Sabha will be required for all the plans and projects taken under this scheme in the villages within the schedule areas. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now let me first clarify what exactly is this and what are they talking about. So in states where there is a lot of mineral exploration, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, some of the northeastern states, what happens is, when you take up such a large area and mineral exploration such a large area, the lives of people living nearby that area becomes very, very bad. There is increasing pollution, many of them have to be displaced also. Every single day they see huge machines and huge cranes, etc. that are working in the nearby areas. In the water gets polluted. In very simple terms, the life is just not worth living in these areas if you are living nearby these areas where mining activities are being undertaken. Now it is a necessity also that the government of India and the government at the state level have to take up these activities. So in order to balance this out, a particular scheme has been launched by the government. This is a Pradhan Mantri Khanij Kshetra Kalyan Yojana. Now the concept is, in these districts, wherever the mineral exploration is being taken place, there will be a body that will be formed called the District Mineral Foundation. So what will happen is, when the company is taking out these minerals or they are making money from these minerals, they will have to contribute a certain sum of money from their profit to these district mineral foundations. These DMF or district mineral foundations will then use that money for the betterment of the lives of people living in these areas. Now they can use it for multiple purposes. They can maybe use it for education, for setting up schools. They can use it for, let's say, afforestation. They can use it for other things, for waste management, water plant, etc. All these kind of things can be taken up by the money that is being given to the District Mineral Foundation, that is a DMF, under this particular scheme. That is the idea. That to ensure that the people who are living in this area do not really have a hard time. That is how the scheme works. All the three given statements about the scheme are correct. The funds will be implemented, or funds will be given to DMF. They will be the ones who will implement this. if the lease is given after Jan 2015, 10% of the royalty will be contributed to the DMF, and also in schedule areas specifically, the 5th schedule areas where you would have seen, in schedule areas specifically, the Gram Sabha will be taken, or Gram Sabha's permission will have to be taken. Only and only then the projects of mining, etc. will be taken up. Okay, all these are correct. Next question. Which of the following government schemes aims to support the students from minority communities clearing prelims conducted by the UPSC, State PSC and Staff Selection Commission? Nayi Roshni, Seekho aur Kamao, Nayi Udan or Ustad. Now, the reason I'm laughing is I have also seen this scheme. So, when I was preparing at that point of time, the scheme had come out and I had got to know about this scheme. So, I am a Sikh, so I belong to the minority community. So, there are no as such benefits of being a minority in this examination, except the fact that I came to know about this scheme, that okay, if you are from a minority and if you clear the prelims examination, and I clearly remember I think it was that for clearing prelims that you would get 25,000 rupees. And as with all the government schemes, you had to deposit tons of papers for that. So I remember getting a lot of printouts, submitting that, cancelled check, etc. All of that had to be address proof, etc. All of that had to be deposited. And in the end, did I get any money? No, I did not get any money. So just that the reality on the ground may be slightly different as compared to what you actually see on the schemes. So this scheme is called Nayi Udan. This is the scheme that is specially for the minority community, and they can get this money, or they are promised this money after they clear the prelims examination itself, so prelim stage itself. And as I am a live example of that, that did not happen. I in fact tried to follow up. If I remember correctly, it's been some years now. I did write an email also. I found an email ID somewhere and I did write an email also asking what is the status of this, etc. And obviously I did not really get a response. Anyway, so Nayi Udan is a scheme especially that is run for minority community in order to encourage them to take part in these kind of examinations and clear them up. Next question. Which of the following is a stated objective of Atal Jyoti Yojana? Number 1. To ensure stable electricity connection to all schools across the country. Second, to ensure power supply to all primary healthcare centers in India. Third, to provide 100% electrification of all the Anganwadis in India. And fourth, to provide solar street lighting systems for public use such as lighting roads, bus stops, etc. Which of these is the major objective of the Atal Jyoti Yojana? The correct answer here is D. It is to provide solar street lighting system for public use such as lighting roads, bus stops, etc. The main objective is to make areas much safer. Now, how do you make them safer? Especially if you put lights into dark areas. Now, I'm sure all of you are aware, in whichever city where you're living, doesn't matter even if it is the most advanced city of India, in every single city you would see there are some areas where you think, why are there no lights in this area? I lived in major cities, I lived in Delhi, Bangalore, etc. and I can still tell you that yes, there are some places where you go and think that this place requires more light, and I'm sure it happens with everyone, irrespective of whichever city that you are in. Girls would know it more because they are more concerned about this because it impacts their safety. Boys may not be that aware, but yes, there is a problem that even in the most advanced of the cities, there are a lot of areas which are very dark. There is absence of lighting. Even if there is lighting, it may not work properly, it may be out of order, it is not being fixed. So the government of India has taken up this project to ensure that all those parts in the entire country where there is an issue of lack of lighting, those areas are taken up, and we set up solar street lighting systems. Solar street lighting systems because number one, it would be much more durable. Yes, in these kind of systems, the initial installation cost would obviously be higher as compared to the other kind of orthodox systems, but they have much more longevity, They do not require a lot of repair work to be done thereafter, and that is why they are much more dependable as well. So that is what the project is, the Atal Jyoti Yojana, to provide solar street lighting systems across the country, especially in the areas of public use, to make the areas much more safer. Let's go to the next question. Consider the following statements about the SVAMITVA scheme. This is the second question about the SVAMITVA scheme that we are discussing today itself. First statement. The objective is creation of accurate land records for rural planning and reduce the property related disputes in the country. Second, the demarcation would be done using drone surveying technology. And third, all the villages in the country will be eventually covered under the SVAMITVA scheme. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now, we have already discussed about this scheme today itself, so I really hope that you already remember this. If you don't, just a quick revision. We discussed the SVAMITVA scheme. What is this? This is mainly introduced to ensure that the land issues across the country in the rural areas specifically are sorted. Because in the rural areas, the land records are very old, outdated, manual, and that is why there is no accurate measurement. In order to make sure that all of that is sorted, the SVAMITVA scheme was introduced. All these given statements about the SVAMITVA scheme are correct. We discussed 3 statements in the beginning of this class also. Those were different statements. Here all of these are correct. They will be used to reduce poverty related disputes. They will also ensure that drone surveying technology is used, and eventually all the villages in the country are expected to be covered under this particular scheme, and only then the scheme will be successful. Okay, this is what the SVAMITVA scheme is. Next question. Consider the following statements with regards to centralized public grievances redress and monitoring system, that is CPGRAMS. Number 1. The Ministry of Home Affairs is the nodal agency for dealing with the complaints on this portal. Second, sub judice cases or any matter concerning judgment given by court, personal or family disputes, RTI matters, etc. are not taken up by CPGRAMS. And third, tracking grievances is also facilitated on this portal through the system generated unique registration number. Which of these given statements is or are correct? Now, this is something that we usually read when we read about governance. There are a lot of initiatives taken by the government under which if you have a problem with a public official, if you have a problem with respect to any government organization, any government department, where you filed a complaint and no action has been taken up, then you have been given the right as a citizen to file certain complaints. One of those portals where you can file those complaints is this portal, the Centralized Public Grievance Redress and Monitoring System. Now let's look at these statements one by one to see if they are correct or not. First, Union Home Affairs Ministry is the nodal agency, right or wrong? Wrong. It is Ministry of Just think about it. Which ministry is it which can be there, which we have been discussing since yesterday? It is Ministry of Personal, Public Grievances and Pensions. The name itself of the ministry has the word public grievances. So Ministry of Personal, Public Grievances and Pension is the ministry that handles this particular portal. Second, sub judice cases or matters where under RTI etc. are not taken up, absolutely correct. This will mostly always be correct when you talk about any portal. None of them would take up matters which are still under judiciary. So those are obviously correct. Third is also correct. There is a tracking number that is given from where you can track it. Now, if you know this question already, great. But again, if you don't know this kind of a question, the easiest way to understand these kind of things is go on Google this particular phrase, and at least once visit this website, visit this portal, so that you can get to know what are the different options that we have here. If you visit these websites or portals and you see them, Just spend 5 odd minutes. It will be very easy for you to remember all these kind of things. All these given statements, out of these, second and third are correct. The answer is B. First is wrong. Also, a side note, I'll just connect it to what we studied yesterday. We had studied yesterday about something called DARPG, remember? DARPG, that was Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances. This department called the DARPG, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, works under this ministry only. And DARPG is the one that handles this CPGRAMS. So this online portal CPGRAMS is handled by DARPG, and DARPG is a department under the Ministry of Personal, Public Grievances and Pension. One more reminder very quickly. Yesterday we had discussed something called Citizens Charter. Remember? Citizens Charter also was a responsibility of DARPG only. The Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, they are the ones who handle all these kind of things. Okay, do remember this. Now, before I move on to the next question, there is one more important thing that you have to understand. Now, there are two types of statements that you can see in these kind of questions. One statement can be that this portal is handled by, or this portal is managed by whom. Then there can be one more statement that would say this portal is developed by whom. Developing party for the government of India for these online portals is always Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology only, that is MEITY, MEITY. So if you see a statement that says that this portal, the CPGRAMS, is developed by MEITY, MEITY, that is correct. Because they are the ones who develop it, they are the ones who run the National Informatics Center, NIC. NIC is the agency of the Government of India that usually does all this IT related work for the Government of India. So that works under the Ministry of Electronics and IT only. Just that the portal is owned by this ministry, they are the ones who work under this. That it was made by MEITY. Okay, do remember this, it will be true for most other portals as well and not just this one. Next question. Under the ethanol blending program, which of the following is the aim set by the Government of India? First, to achieve 20% ethanol blending in petrol by April 2025. Second, to achieve 10% ethanol blending in petrol by April 2025. Third, to achieve 25% ethanol blending. And fourth, to achieve 40% ethanol blending. Which of these is the aim set by the Government of India? Now, the correct answer to this is A. See, for these kind of questions, you have to be careful, specifically because for this particular topic, the Government of India has been changing its goalpost very, very regularly. So, it's not that they announced that yes, by 2025 we'll do 20% blending. They kept on increasing the goal and it has been done after every few months. So, the last announcement that the government had made was that by April 2025, the government wants to achieve this aim of 20% ethanol blending in petrol. Now, you would have heard or you would have seen two words, phrases, E10 and E20 with respect to this only. Now, what is E10 and E20? E10 is that the government's aim was first to ensure that we make ethanol blending of 10% by April 2022. 10% by April 2022. That was the first aim. And then the second aim was E20. For E20 also, the interesting part was earlier our goal was 2030. So the earlier goal was that Indian government wanted to achieve 20% ethanol blending in petrol by the year 2030. But now what the government has done is government has preponed that, as the government has done with many other cases also. If you remember this, the Indian government skipped the BS5, the Bharat stage 5 stage. From BS4 we jumped to BS6. So government skipped that stage because we wanted to set a better target or a higher target. You saw what happened in the recent Glasgow summit also, where the Prime Minister of the country increased our own target for renewable energy generation. We also set a target for the net zero date. We also increased our target for solar power generation, etc. So Indian government in the past few years has been giving itself quite a bit of stiff targets. We are decreasing our deadlines without any pressure from outside, which is a good thing. So now, right now, the target that we have is that we will achieve this blending of 20% by 2025 April. Earlier, it was till 2030. This program is called E20. Do remember that. Okay. Now, apart from that, let me ask you one more question. Let's talk about the current scenario. At present, how much ethanol blending do we do? At present, how much ethanol is blended with petrol in India? The present number is 8.5%. The present is 8.5%. Now, the point is that you have to understand is, we cannot all of a sudden take such a drastic jump that tomorrow we say, okay, we'll mix half the ethanol with petrol, because you don't know how the efficiency of the cars or the other transportation will be. Would the engines be able to handle it or not? Because how much energy would the engine generate from this would impact. So that is why we have to very, very gradually increase it. There are obviously multiple reasons behind the government's decision for taking up the ethanol blending program, and also making sure that we are putting our deadline much closer to us. First, as all of you are well aware, India is one of the largest importers of petrol and petroleum products throughout the world. We have a large import bill, so we are trying to curtail that. Not just this, it will also have impact on the environment, because obviously burning 100% petrol as compared to burning 100%, as compared to burning 80% petrol and 20% ethanol, the later case is much better for the environment as well. And the third, as you would obviously expect, is it will help the farmers also. The farmers who can, as a byproduct or as a side income, start making ethanol, and they can start selling it to the oil companies, especially because they can blend it with petrol. That is how all these things would come together under the government's initiative of ethanol blending, that is 20% by 2030, by 2025. Next question is this. Setu Bharatam project, launched in 2016, so not a new one, was aimed at what? Number one, making all the national highways free of railway level crossings. Second, to significantly increase the number of national waterways in the country. Third, to develop the shipping trade lines with Southeast Asian nations. And fourth, to develop 500 new national highways with 2050 or within 2050. Which of these given statements is or are correct about the Setu Bharatam project? Now again, something that was not really in the news recently, it's an old project, but something that is still relevant today. The correct answer is A. The aim is to make all the national highways free of railway level crossings. Now what is the objective and what is the purpose? As you can understand, there are still a lot of railway crossings in India that pass through national highways. So there are multiple problems with it. Obviously, it is dangerous. In most of the national highways that you see, the speed limits are very high, 80, 100. So because the vehicles in those national highways especially are running at a high speed, you cannot really expect, or there is a lot of problem when the vehicle actually comes across to a halt because of these railway traffics or because of these railway lines. The third problem that we have is that in these national highways, you would see mostly there are no traffic lights on national highways because there is no intersection. Because of that, national highways usually do not see a traffic jam, etc. But when you have railway level crossings or when you have railway crossings, etc., the problem is that you would see the vehicle stopping, there might be a traffic jam also, and that is why the government of India had made this plan under Setu Bharatam to ensure that all the national highways across the country are free of these railway level crossings. Has this been achieved right till now? No, it has not been achieved till now, but the government is still working in that regard for Setu Bharatam. Now, How would the government do that? See, obviously it is not easy to make sure that all the railway lines are distracted, or you cannot change the national highways also. So it's not an easy project. But what the government is trying to do is, there are multiple initiatives. For example, building bridges. Building bridges means, for let's say this is a national highway, this is a railway line, maybe make a flyover here so that the vehicles can go over the railway line. So these kind of flyovers, etc., these kind of bridges, etc., are being made. For example, in 2016 itself, the government of India started with making 64 bridges. So there is still progress on this project, although there are certain bridges or there are certain national highways that are still to be made free of these railway crossings even today. Let's see the next question. Under the Saansad Adarsh Gram Yojana, which of the following statements is not correct? Okay, we have to choose which of these is not correct. Number 1, Lok Sabha member of parliament can choose any of the Gram Panchayats from within his or her constituency. Second, the Rajya Sabha members of parliament can choose from the rural areas of a district of his or her choice in the state from which he or she is elected. Third, nominated members of parliament can choose any Gram Panchayat from the rural areas of any district in the country. And fourth, none of the above. We discussed yesterday also that when you read a question in the UPSC examination, you have to pay special attention whether is it that you have to choose the correct answer or whether you have to choose the incorrect or not correct answer. For example, over here also, you have to choose which of these is not correct. The fact is that first, second and third are correct and fourth is the only remaining option. That is why the answer here is D. First, second and third are correct. Now, many of you would have certain questions because I know you are smart people, you would have read about this. So what is this project and what are the few exceptions that I want to discuss here? It was a scheme announced by the Prime Minister of the country. The scheme was very simple. The members of parliament were given this responsibility that you should adopt or take up a certain village in your constituency and try to ensure that in that constituency or in that particular village there is model development that takes place. Infrastructure is developed, good schools, etc. are made. This is what was the scheme all about. Now, all the three given statements are correct, while there are certain exceptions. For example, the exceptions are, now let's take a very simple example. If I am a member of parliament and if I have been given the choice, take up any village for model development, my first choice would obviously be my own village, right? My own village as in, let's say if I belong to a certain village, if my house is in that area, my first choice would obviously be to go with that. If that is not possible, what can be the second choice? The second choice that I would have is most probably get or adopt a village of my partner, my wife or my husband, whatever the case may be, to adopt that. So these are the two exceptions that have been kept out. Meaning that when the member of parliament is choosing that particular village, the member of parliament is not allowed to choose his or her own village, and the member of parliament is not allowed to choose a village of his or her wife. Apart from that, this is how it works. Okay. Now, about this particular scheme, do understand, under this scheme, there is no additional money that is given to the members of parliament for their development. So, no additional budget, no additional money that will be given to them. So, how will development take place then? At the end of the day, development means money. So, for a member of parliament, they obviously get their own MP Lads fund, that is a local area development fund that they get. Those are the funds that they can use, number one. Secondly, apart from that, what the government or what the Prime Minister said or what the government had actually envisaged was that they can also look into CSR funds. Now, what are CSR funds? CSR stands for Corporate Social Responsibility. I'm sure all of you would have read this. Corporate Social Responsibility means after a company becomes of a certain size in terms of revenue, profit, which you have to tell me in the comment, by the way, after what size or after what qualification the company has to compulsorily contribute to CSR. So the law is, after certain profit, after certain turnover, every company in India has to compulsorily contribute 2% of its profit on an average of last 3 years. So 2% of profit of 3 years average. So last 3 years, whatever the average was, of that you take 2%, and that is something that you have to contribute in the form of CSR. Now what is CSR? The Government of India defines CSR with certain activities. It includes education, sanitation, health, environment, etc. So companies have to compulsorily spend that much money there. So if you look at the big companies of India that are worth crores and crores of rupees, let's say there's a big company of India, ones that are owned by Tata, Reliance or Adani or Bajaj, etc. Let's say if there's a company that makes 5,000 crore rupees of profit, then even 2% of this would be 100 crore. Just imagine this. And that is something that they have to compulsorily spend. That is the minimum. How do they spend it? A lot of these have their own foundation. Like you would have heard the name, there's something called the Reliance Foundation. So under Reliance Foundation, Reliance does a lot of funding of education initiatives, government schools, etc., afforestation. Similarly, the companies either make up their own foundation, their own arm, so that they can utilize that money, or they choose certain NGOs or they choose certain other areas. They maybe adopt certain villages where they spend that money. That is CSR, corporate social responsibility. And that applies to all the companies that come under that bracket. And which bracket you have to tell me in the comment section. Private companies also and government companies also. Like government companies who make huge money. Take an example of ONGC that makes huge amount of money for the government. Those companies like ONGC, etc. also have to contribute 2% of their profit. So under this particular scheme, the members of parliament have been asked that get in touch with these corporates. They have to spend their 2% money somewhere. So get that money into your development and make sure that it is developed. So remember this, that you don't have to, or you will not get any extra money as a member of parliament. You have to ensure all that development takes place without any extra budget from your MPLAD funds, from any other donation that you are getting, or from the CSR. Okay. Now the sad part is, although it is a pretty good scheme, although it is such a scheme which could have given great results, but the sad part is that not a lot has been done. It was expected that there were multiple villages that will turn into modern villages, but not a lot has been done, and that is why across the country, wherever the members of parliament have taken up these villages, there is no drastic change that has been seen. And that includes even the villages that are taken by very high profile ministers also. That is why this scheme particularly has not been giving the kind of positive result that we had hoped for. Okay. Next question. Which of the following is the objective of Startup India Seed Fund Scheme? Number 1, giving financial assistance to farmers to experiment with genetically modified seeds, that is GM seeds. Second, to provide financial assistance to startups at the very initial stage of their project. Third, to help the startups in bringing their IPO, that is initial public offering. And fourth, none of the above. Which of these are the objectives of the Startup India Seed Fund Scheme specifically? Now, if you know the correct answer, great. If you know the correct answer, you might be laughing at some of the options that are given here. But do understand this, that UPSC does give these kind of options. It might be very strange to actually hear in this particular question, but these are options which are related to that particular word called seed. If you are familiar with the startup scene, if you're familiar with how the companies work or how the IPOs, etc. work, you would know how seed or seed funding actually works. The correct answer over here in this particular question is B. The objective of the Startup India Seed Fund Scheme specifically is to provide financial assistance to startups at the very initial stage of their project. It is not about experimenting with the GM seeds. It is not about bringing their IPO. Now, what is IPO? I'm sure all of you right now would be very familiar with the concept of IPO, especially with the LIC IPO that is coming into picture. Yesterday was the last day of LIC IPO. So, IPO is initial public offering. I am sure all of you would have read about this in economics or by yourself. Initial public offering means when a private company wants to take up investment from the public or wants to issue shares in the share market. That is initial public offering, IPO. Now that comes at a very later stage, because to introduce an IPO or to have an IPO, to go public, to list your company on the stock exchange, you need to be about a few years old. But this particular scheme is for those companies which the government wants to help at the very initial stages. That is what the Startup India Seed Fund scheme is. Now, if you remember, yesterday we did discuss something about AIM. Remember? That was the Atal Innovation Mission. We discussed the fact that the Atal Innovation Mission, or AIM, is something that was initiated by the Niti Aayog, and it has multiple components, including the Atal Tinkering Labs, which are mainly based or which are mainly focused on small children. And we also discussed that there is something called the Atal Incubation Centers. We discussed yesterday also the concept of incubation centers and how Government of India has been giving quite a push to incubation centers. These are centers which are made by the Government of India or which are made by private entities, especially to help the startups, to help those people who are trying to set up a new business or a new company. These are places where they can be given help for legal advice, they can be given help in terms of financial advice, where they can come and meet new people, etc. These are incubation centers, where if I am starting a company, someone else is starting a company, we can sit together, discuss what are the common grounds, what did he learn, what did I learn, and we can discuss on those kind of things. These are called incubation centers. Similar is the objective of the Startup India Seed Fund program. They are helping these companies at the very initial stages. Now, when you say initial stages, that means they have not started their business. For a company that has just been made, doing business or starting the business a very, very later stage. Initial stages includes stages of ideation, stages of prototype, stages of still thinking about how will they get financial help, business model, etc. Financial help, business model, all these are the initial stages where the Government of India under this particular scheme will help the NGOs in coming through. Remember, IPO is a very later stage activity. Under this particular scheme, the Government of India will be helping especially the companies in the initial stages. These are all the government schemes which we found important specifically for this prelims examination. We have had 2 classes on government schemes yesterday and today. In all, we covered about more than 60 schemes, so I really hope that it was a good refresher revision for you. As I discussed earlier, this crash course will go on every single day, every evening, starting at 7:30 p.m. sharp till 21st of May. We will be covering all the topics, covering entire syllabus of the UPSC examination, to cover current affairs of the last 365 days, and even beyond that if there are certain topics which we find important. Do join us every single day sharp at 7:30 for the same. The detailed syllabus of what will be covered which day is given in the description of the video, so do download that as well. I really hope that you like the video. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel of BYJU'S IAS. Do press the bell icon also, because if you do that, you will get a notification as soon as we go live. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye. Good night.